all of you are taking your seat, let me go ahead and begin the event today. Thank you to those of you who are joining us here in person. Thank you for those of you who are joining us online through all the different platforms. And to those of you who are going to be watching this video in the days and weeks to come. I'm Rajul Pandya-Loge. I'm Director for Communications and Public Affairs here at IFPRI. I'm very pleased to welcome all of you to our special event on reducing food loss and waste, making it personal. We at IFPRI are delighted to partner with Stop Wasting Food, Selina, Juul, World Resources Institute, Champions 12.3, and the Embassy of Denmark here in Washington, D.C. to co-organize this event. We have a fabulous program lined up for you today. And with that, let me introduce to you our moderator for the event today. He is Troels Vensild. He is the Minister Counsellor of Food, Agriculture and Fisheries at the Embassy of Denmark here in Washington. Please join me in welcoming Troels.
Thank you very much, Juul, and also a very warm welcome from my side to this first 12.3 Champions Day event. A warm welcome to the audience here in the room, and also all of you out there online. I would first very much like to thank our partners, IFPRI, World Resource Institute, and Selina Juul from Stop Wasting Food for inviting the Embassy of Denmark to co-host an event on this very relevant topic. It's an honor to be in your company. We have chosen this particular day, March 12th, or as we say where I come from, the 12th of March. Because as you can see, it coincides with the SDG 12.3, food loss and waste, and the 12.3 champions. The amount of food loss and waste globally is a serious challenge. I will leave that to Director General Shenggen in a little while to set the scene for us. But however, before I give the floor to Shenggen, just a few words. So the intention with today's event is to continue raise awareness of this important issue and to showcase some interesting and innovative solutions, because we need action and a lot more action than what's already happening. But the positive notion is that solutions exist and we can all contribute in a meaningful way. Therefore, what can we do as individuals and how can we scale up what we do? There will be two key questions for today's event. Today's speakers will present different perspectives of action at different levels, individual, national, and global, because food loss and waste is a global challenge, and that is why World Resource Institute, IFPRI, and the Embassy of Denmark, together with all of you, this morning will make a splash. However, we are part of a wave that started earlier today in the Far East, so it covers 3 continents. Denmark's representations in Tokyo, Japan, Beijing and Shanghai in China, and Hanoi in Vietnam are also engaged today with local partners on food loss and waste. Furthermore, the Danish Minister for Environment and Food, Jakob Ellemann-Jensen, together with a public-private entity, Food Nation, in Copenhagen is also hosting an event with leading Danish companies that will share their perspectives and solutions. So this is one way of how we in Denmark is trying to overcome this issue through public and private partnerships. Nevertheless, we do not have all the answers, and it's very important that we learn from each other, we inspire each other, and that is why the government of Denmark is hosting the annual Food Waste Summit, Better Food for More People, in Copenhagen on August 29th and 30th, focusing on ensuring better food for more people. The summit is built around the Sustainable Development Goals, and participants are representatives from the food chain, farmers, food producers, thought leaders, chefs, political leaders, NGOs, global and local companies. And on that note, I will call on Shenggen, Director General of IFPRI and 12.3 Champion, to set the scene for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Good morning, everybody. It's really good to see such a big crowd here on the March 12th in the morning. I think March 12th is a special day for many of the people. I mean, in my own country, it's the so-called tree planting day. So you're supposed to plant maybe 5 to 10 trees somewhere, go outside to a little hill. And also it's a day that my university moved from one city to another, from Yangzhou to Nanjing. So that was many years ago. That was a day where we really celebrate the formal sort of it's a reform, or the start of the reform of the Chinese system, including education, health, many. And today, I think it's so great to see you all there. Initially, we were worried that such a special topic, if we maybe don't have many people in the room. But I'm so proud to see many of you here. So as Troels said, that I'm a champion of the 12.3 to reduce food waste and loss. I think really organized, hosted by WRI. So I really hope by the end of this event, all of you will become a champion, so not just me. So I'm very committed to do that. I hope you will be equally committed to that important cause. Why? Yes, we know that we are wasting 1.3, that's 1 billion tons of food every year. That's double the consumption of the Chinese total food consumption, annual food consumption. You can feed Africans probably 4 or 5 times per year, just using that 1.3 billion tons of food. Indian probably 3 times, 4 times a year. We also know that the 1/3 of food wasteful loss emits probably 8%, 9% of total greenhouse gas emission. That's almost 1/3 of the total agricultural, food, and the deforestation emission. And we also know that most of the food wasted and lost are nutritious, healthy foods. So we can cut down the food waste and loss by half from now to 2030. That is the 12.3 goal. So we can win on many things. Win on climate change, win on food and nutrition security, win economically. So maybe triple win or quadruple wins. So IFPRI did a study some years ago to use one of these so-called model to model the economic impact of reducing food waste and loss. So every $1 invested in reducing food waste and loss, you will have $17 in return. So huge, huge returns. So obviously, we still have a lot of things that we don't know. Yes, we know that food waste is 1/3. We can challenge that number. I know when FAO announced that number some years ago. It is true that, well, we do waste lots of food, whether it's 1/3, whether it's a quarter, whether it's 40%, it does not matter. The number is big. Now the question is, where do we waste? I mean, we also know that in rich countries, we waste a lot of food. In poor countries, we lose a lot of food, even before, to our household, before our consumption. So that's something IFPRI is really working on, food loss. In fact, IFPRI launched several studies under Rob's division's leadership to track, measure where food loss happens. And then we can really target, we can optimize our resources to make sure that our investment has the highest returns. So WRI likes to show the killer chart. The killer chart. One chart can show you the big facts, big number that can really motivate our actions. I think I really point that. But this one, just to let you know that facts, the data, information are still very critical. We still don't know much about the loss, food loss part. So for example, some of the case studies from China, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Honduras, Peru will tell you, in fact, most of the food loss happens at farm, even before you move your food out of your farm. We already lose probably 60, 70% of the food. So that's where we really focus on. Yeah, we have to look at the whole value chain, production, let's say processing, transportation, retailing, wholesaling, household consumption, yes, the whole value chain. We must do that. But some of the case studies that shows that we already lost lots of food, even before we move the food outside of the farm. So where do we target our resources? Can we improve technology, storage, or even harvesting, handling at a household level, educate farmers, educate communities to really use their limited resources to tackle some of the biggest challenges we face. So I'm really looking forward to today's big debate. I'm pretty sure many others will give you good examples and probably the action you wanted to take. And I hope by the end of this conversation, it's not just you, your family, your network, your community will become a champion of reducing food waste and loss. This is such an important cause. We must all work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Shenggen, for setting the scene for us. And now we will move into our rapid fire presentations. The speakers will take questions when we have done all the presentations, so please make your notes. You will have a chance to get in or engage in conversation with them. Our first speaker is Rob Voss. Rob is Director for Markets, Trade and Institutions Division here at IFPRI. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Let me cut straight to the chase and pick up where Shenggen left off. Most of our work on food loss and waste is concentrated on food loss. That's, for those that don't know that, that's the part of food loss and waste that refers to what gets lost in the beginning of the food chain, particularly that is all the way from the farm onto the retail part, and everything beyond we call food waste. A key part of the focus is not just on the quantities lost, but on the qualities lost, and that's also where it gets personal, applicable to farmers, traders, and others down the chain, is because they get economic losses because of the lower quality of the food that comes to the market. And the reason for that is not because farmers are stupid or that they don't know what to do, but simply in most cases that the incentives are not there. The prices are too low. Sometimes the price is so low it doesn't make sense to harvest the products, and they lose the production because of that, simply because the cost of hiring extra workers to harvest the product is not worth it. So we have a range of causes which go from the incentives, but also on to what happens further in the chain, whether there's enough storage space, marketing capacity, and so on. So what I would like to mention is what are the possible solutions that we have here. The first thing is, particularly, is if the incentives are not right for farmers, that they can make the money that they want in the market, then any simple technological solution also will not work. So what we have been doing, and we're still having in progress, is a couple of experiments to see what would drive farmers, vendors, processors to avoid food losses along the chain. And here's 2 or 3 examples, of which 2 have already concrete results. The first is in Guatemala, where bean producers, we set up an experiment where they have better contractual arrangements for which they get a premium in the market if they preserve the right quality of the beans. Impact, 7% less food loss and less food quality loss, which means about 1/3 less of the losses that otherwise would have taken place. Same in or different experiments in Ethiopia with corn producers. We gave them for free hermetic bags, which normally cost $2.50. So we still have to test what would happen if they have to pay for the bags. But here, the reduction in the quality loss about 9% for those that start using the bag, and with that could get better access to the market. In this case, it's almost half of the food loss that otherwise would have taken place was saved. In Ecuador, there's still experiments, so can't show the results there, but that's where we work more with extension services to provide the farmers with the better knowledge how to deal with the crops, preserve the quality, and through that have a better access to the markets. But here are a couple of concrete cases. The bottom line is there's simple technologies, very low cost technologies, but if the markets don't work for them, provide the right incentives, then we won't see the food loss reduction that we see. If they're there, then we can have enormous gains, both for producers, traders, processors, and consumers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. We'll now turn to Denise Osterhues. Denise is Senior Director for Corporate Affairs at the Kroger Company. Please, Denise.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Denise Osterhues, and I lead sustainability and community engagement for Kroger, based in Cincinnati, Ohio. So for those of you who may not know Kroger, we are a U.S. grocery retailer. We have about 500,000 associates working in 2,800 stores in 35 states and right here in D.C. as Harris Teeter. We also operate 36 manufacturing facilities, so we process a lot of our own brand food. And we have 42 distribution centers, so we have a pretty extensive operations and logistics network. So I am lucky enough to spend most of my time working on Kroger's Zero Hunger, Zero Waste social impact plan. And that is our commitment to end hunger in our communities and eliminate waste across our company by 2025. So those are really huge goals, and it's kind of scary, but we do have a plan, so I want to kind of outline the key parts of our plan. The first is we committed to launch an innovation fund to fight hunger and food waste, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also committed to donate 3 billion meals by 2025 to our communities. But not just more food, also more balanced meals to promote health and nutrition. We committed to be a zero waste company by 2020 and then to achieve zero food waste by 2025. To help do that, we pledged to support public policy and infrastructure improvements to help achieve our goals. And, oops, went forward too quickly. We also pledged to work with partners because we truly cannot do this alone, and we know that. And so we work with Feeding America, World Wildlife Fund, and ReFed, among others, to help us on our journey. And then our ultimate goal is to transform our communities and improve health for millions. So how are we going to do that? One thing I wanted to point out is truly the topic of make it personal is really important for us because we have 500,000 associates in our stores every day, and they have a lot to do. And then we also serve 9.5 million plus customers every day who are coming through our stores, ordering online. And so it's important for us to connect our customers, associates, and communities in our journey to zero hunger and zero waste. So we ask our associates to do a lot every day in our stores. And the power of zero hunger, zero waste is that it's very clear what they should do and why they should do it. So before, we used to be really good as an operator to tell our associates what to do every day. We never really explained why to do it. So Zero Hunger, Zero Waste has really helped us connect emotionally to their hearts and help explain that when they set food aside every day in the store for donation, they're helping end hunger in their community and stopping food waste. So I wanted to just mention a couple of the things we do in our stores every day to manage our food. So first, as a retailer, we try and sell as much as we can, right? We tell our associates to get it out on the sales floor and keep it fresh and keep it moving. When it nears expiration, we mark it down. So we have the red bags here are our markdown produce program. We call produce off the sales floor, put it in these red bags, and offer it as a discount, and our customers love it. And they come in and just grab these all day long, and they fly off the shelves. The other thing we do is donate. So when food can no longer be sold, we rescue it and donate it. So last year we donated about 90 million pounds of food across the company to our Feeding America partner food banks and agencies in our communities. And that's a big number, but we actually know we can do more. So when we did our food waste analysis last year, we learned we still have a big donation opportunity. We also focus on prevention. So a couple of things we're doing are our Imperfect Produce branded line of products is coming out soon called Peculiar Picks. So we're excited to see how customers respond to that. And we're also doing some date label standardization work to make it clearer for our customers when it is safe and best to use the food they have at home. So on the subject of innovation, though, we also just recently launched our Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Innovation Fund, which is part of our new foundation. And we issued our first open call in February. So excited to say we got 400 applications. We think about a third of them are focused on food waste prevention, a third on recovery, and about a third on recycling. So we're going through all of that now. But we are super excited to see what everyone is proposing because we're looking for things that will help us stop hunger and food waste. And we know that we can't do it alone, so it will take all of us working together, our customers, our associates, our communities, to really achieve our vision of a world with zero hunger and zero waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Our next speaker is Amy Bachman. Amy is Director for Procurement and Sustainability at DC Central Kitchen here in Washington, D.C. Amy, please.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Hi, everybody. As you said, my name is Amy Bachman. I'm the Director of Procurement with DC Central Kitchen. So we're the local one in the room. DC Central Kitchen has been around for just hit 30 years this year. And so our mission is to fight hunger differently. We were founded with the premise that waste is wrong, whether it be food or whether it be people. And so what we seek to do and what really our initial work was taking food that otherwise would get thrown away, from grocery stores and wholesalers and farms and restaurants, and bringing that all to a central space, where we then use that food as a tool to train men and women who were coming out of homelessness or prison to help them get jobs. Going back to that sort of, food is never going to solve hunger idea, we wanted to look at ways that we could flip the switch and utilize food as a way to train people and realize that, educating people and helping them to get jobs is the best way to do that. So fast forward, 30 years, our work has greatly expanded. We do, recover food every day, and we bring it to that central space. And our training program has trained hundreds of men and women in our culinary program. But we've also really delved into how can we then create more jobs for our graduates. And that's really developed our social enterprise. So in addition to recovering food and providing meals to shelters, we are also a large social enterprise that consists of our contract with DC Public Schools. So we do 8,000 school meals every day, purchase food, but meals that are going into elementary schools and middle schools across the city. Additionally, we run a catering company to work to provide more opportunities for our graduates to find work, as well as a program called Healthy Corners that seeks to bring healthy, nutritious food into corner stores in mostly Ward 7 and 8, which are the most food desert and sort of impoverished areas of the city. But going back to our food recycling program and kind of the heart of what we're talking about today, and most of what my work gets to be, we partner with all different types of companies around the city. We work mostly now with wholesalers, places like Cisco Baltimore or Coastal Sunbelt, to recover produce and meat and dairy products that they otherwise wouldn't be selling. Products that might be nearing their expiration, or just might, not have a buyer for it. So many different reasons where product can kind of fall through the cracks. And so we're able to recover that food and bring it back to our kitchen. We also work with grocery stores. We work with farmers markets, restaurants. We do a program in the summertime called gleaning, which is an old word, which sort of means recovering food from the farm. So speaking to that farm loss that we all know is such a big part of this issue, we seek to bring volunteers to farms to physically harvest the food that otherwise, farmers themselves wouldn't pick. Sometimes it's for cosmetic reasons. Other times, it's a pick your own farm, and people tend to knock off apples when they go to pick that perfect one, and 5 fall on the ground. And so we come by the next day and get all those fallen apples and make applesauce, or send them out as a healthy snack. About half of the product that we bring into the kitchen is produce. That's definitely a huge part of what we do. And we do, as much raw unprepared product as we can, since we are cooking with the meals. And what we've realized in recent years is, in the beginning of DC Central Kitchen's work, we worked a lot with restaurants. We worked a lot with prepared, catered food, and we've realized in recent years, since we are cooking from scratch. That food's really challenging to deal with. And we started monitoring our own internal waste and figuring out what are we not able to use. And so we've actually started partnering with other organizations in the city, one of them being Food Rescue US, which is a really cool organization that utilizes volunteers to actually pick up mostly prepared food and bring it directly to agencies that serve in-house. And that's allowed us to actually reduce our own internal food waste and make sure that a really important part of the food waste puzzle is getting to where it needs to be and realizing kind of what piece we have to play. In addition, due to our large social enterprise, we are a major food business. We buy a lot of food and we produce a lot of meals. And so internally, we're looking really closely at what we do. How can we understand what we might be wasting at the schools? What can we do better to make sure our kids are eating all the food that we provide to them? And so that's been a big piece of our work. Finally, I just do want to note our national program. It's called the Campus Kitchens Project. That's sort of our program on the road where we train college students to recover food from their campus cafeterias to then produce meals throughout their community. It's actually how I got my start. I was a student at Wake Forest University and started recovering food there and then really just haven't looked back. But it's a great way for us to really bring this model to the rest of the country and really get our youth involved in that work. So thank you all.
Thank you, Amy. And I would like to see Daniel Ratner up here. Daniel is partner and head of growth at Your Local. Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel with Your Local. So imagine that you've just sat through a really great speaker series with some brilliant speakers. Maybe you've done some productive networking or crafted a few good tweets. But ultimately, the day goes on and the day ends and you are hungry. So you decide that you want to go treat yourself to a delicious blueberry scone or a really big sandwich. So you hustle out to your favorite spot and you get in the door just before it closes. And as you're checking out, you remember, oh wow, okay, I had a lot of takeaways from that food waste talk I was just at. So you take a quick glance around and notice that right behind the counter, there's still a ton of pastries or pre-prepared sandwiches and ready-to-eat salads. So if you're especially curious, you ask the staffer and say, hey, what happens to all this food once you close? And the staffer, knowing that, oh, we have to actually throw it all out, isn't a good enough answer. So instead, they kind of shrug their shoulders and give you your food and off you go. And maybe they're helpless because they've tried to donate their food, but they couldn't meet a minimum threshold to partner with a nonprofit. Or maybe they've considered doing a discount bin, but we're a little bit worried about how it could cannibalize their current sales. So Your Local exists because we know there's a better way than putting good food into the trash. We reduce your carbon footprint with every meal by allowing users to buy and pick up food directly in a restaurant to make sure that unsold food is actually being used. So Your Local started as a grassroots effort in Copenhagen. It's now a solution for tens of thousands of people. And we're also growing in Brooklyn and a solution for over 50 different shops right now in Brooklyn. So how does it work? So we are an app-based marketplace where shops can post and promote their surplus food at a discount. This enables users to buy that food and go directly into the shop to get it. It's a really simple way for restaurants to make additional revenue from what would otherwise be shrink, for users to feel empowered because now they're able to vote with their dollar. Also, they're able to stretch their dollar a bit more because food that would normally be inaccessible for them based on their budget now is well within their means. And then it's really nice for the environment too because there's not good food rotting away in the landfill. So this is an ecosystem that we're really excited to be a part of because there's a lot of innovation in it right now, and we are focused on the individual. So we're focused on getting that consumer activated. We've had a few learnings along the way. primarily due to some mistakes that we've made. The first one is action leads to awareness, leads to concern. So intuition would say that you need to start with awareness, and then from there, people are concerned, and then they'll take action. But what we found is, yes, you can kind of activate maybe that 8% of people that care about social first and foremost, but that 92%, they need to have a very simple way to take action. Excuse me. So being able to remove any type of barriers of entry so they can take action, learn more about the problem of food waste, be concerned about it, and maybe even take those learnings back to their own kitchen. The second one is simplicity sells. So this is really important. We're working with restaurants and with consumers. So on the restaurant side, they have 32 other things that they're worried about. So if this isn't something that's simple, it just won't be utilized. On the user side, the interface and the value proposition has to be extremely transparent, or it'll be forgotten about, and they'll use maybe a Grubhub or a Seamless as their solution for food, even if this has a nice social benefit to it. And then the last one, selfish over selfless. So we started messaging and screaming from the rooftops or the streets of Brooklyn, use your local and you'll save the planet. And we got a few heads to turn, but not enough. And what we found is that we need to put that self-benefit first, which means rather than positioning and saying, hey, save the planet and save money, it's just a simple switch of saying save money and save the planet or reduce your carbon footprint. And although that shift seems simple, it took us a good amount of resources to recognize that. So again, really excited to be here, really great to brush shoulders with some other leaders in this space, and we're your local, look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Daniel. Now I would like to call on Esben Lunde Larsen. Esben is a fellow at the food program at World Resource Institute. Esben, please.
Thank you very much. To be honest, when I changed from my position as a cabinet minister for environment and food in Denmark and started working at the World Resources Institute, I was not aware that I was expected to become a dumpster diver. And even though I have the responsibility for waste in Denmark and have visited numerous waste handling facilities, I have literally never dived in. But today I'm proud to say that I am a dumpster diver, literally. Because that is the way we at World Resources Institute keep track on our waste. Initiated by my good colleagues more than a year ago, we set targets, we measure, and we act. And that is really also what we hope that a lot of other workplaces will do after today. Participate in our new Office Food Waste Challenge, which I'm excited to announce here today. It's a call for action for other workplaces of every kind to volunteer done by a small team of excellent and dedicated staff volunteering to sort through the trash to figure out how much do we have of waste. This investigation showed that we were sending 14 pounds of food to the landfill each day. Not much, but adding up, it's actually 1.5 tons of food in a year, or weight-wise, what resembles 3,000 loaves of bread. And then we started to act. Armed with information about the type and source of food waste, we went after the hotspots in our office. Leftovers from catered events, uneaten lunches by staff, and forgotten food in the office kitchen refrigerators. To address catering waste, our office events manager instructed staff simply to cut the amount they ordered for an event by 25%. But still, we would have leftovers. So what to do about that? Well, that led to a whole new group of staff. Not the beach boys, but the beeline boys and girls. Hungry interns rushing to get free food outside our conference center when a leftover food email was sent to the staff. And I have been there too, to be honest. We also started a composting program with green composting bins with clear visual instructions in our kitchen and coffee break areas. And to address leftovers in the fridge, our office facilities manager started to inform staff by email further in advance of when fridges would be cleaned out so staff use up their food in time. And the good news is, it really works. After just 1 year, we have lowered our food waste in the office with around 75%. And we just completed our most recent quarterly waste audit last week. And this bag shows you how much food we waste today. It's about 3 pounds. That's a big difference from 14 pounds we used to send to the landfill every day. But we still want to reduce the last part of food waste in our office. And our 3 past audits have shown that we are hovering around 80% diversion. So we have plateaued, so now we need to move again. And we collect our waste audit data by different zones in the office, and now we're going to engage staff in a competition among the zones for highest diversion and highest accuracy. So that's the next step. But to conclude, if you're up to this challenge, all it takes is 3 simple steps in the office to get you started: target, measure, and act. And you will need to monitor your progress and adjust your strategies as needed, but there are resources to help, and we have put them together on the Challenge's new webpage, officefoodwastechallenge.org. And we have also made a little handout here for you that is very easy to work with. So honoring my excellent colleagues who have initiated this setup and passionately driven it forward, I would like to welcome you all to become waste angels and dumpster divers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esben. I know there are handouts right out in front, so you can take one of these one pages as you leave later. Thank you, Esben. And now I'd like to call on Victoria Prowse. Victoria is a relationship manager at Rabobank. Victoria.
I'm very interested in becoming a dumpster diver, so I'm going to take you up on that one soon. First of all, I'm Victoria Prowse, Relationship Manager in the innovation team at Rabobank. While I won't have to explain to you food loss and waste today, we've heard some amazing initiatives taking place. I'm sure some of you are scratching your head as to why a bank representative is standing here today. So let me explain. Rabobank is a Dutch bank with deep historical roots in food and agribusiness. We are proud to work with the entire food and ag chain, and we recognise the challenges that our sector are facing ahead of us. By 2050, we'll have 2 billion more mouths to feed, and climate change, pollution, and resource scarcity will mean that we have less to produce the food to feed them with. We are at a crucial crossroads where the public, the government, and corporates are simultaneously crying out for positive change, and Rabobank is committed to being a leader in that positive change. Our mission is to grow a better world together, and we are committed to changing the way we grow, distribute, and consume food. Part of our approach in doing this is helping our clients and partners develop and scale sustainable innovations across the food value chain, from farm to fork. I want to talk to you today about 2 global innovation platforms that help connect our clients with game-changing innovations. Food Bites, a pitch competition for F&A startups, and Terra, our accelerator that focuses on results-oriented pilots between startups and corporates. Through our Food Bites platform, we've had over 2,000 startups apply to pitch, and 265 selected entrepreneurs have graced our stage. Each startup application is scored by industry leaders, and one of the key criteria that selected applicants are tackling a concept that is focused on the triple bottom line: people, profit, and planet. Several Food Bites alumni are working towards reducing food waste along the supply chain and achieving SDG 12.3. We are giving these disruptive innovators a public platform, connecting them with clients, investors, and industry leaders to pilot programs and trial new technology. For example, Winnow creates digital tools that allow real-time data monitoring of discarded food in commercial kitchens. This is helping chefs run more sustainable and profitable businesses by reducing the amount of food wasted at the end of each day. Winnow are now working with global brands like Compass Group, IKEA, and Hilton, transforming their commercial kitchens into intelligent operations. Out of all food products, fruit and vegetables have the highest wastage rates at 45%. Food Bites alumni Pulp Pantry is making use of the 1 million pounds of pulp that a single large commercial juicery might produce each year by reinventing classic childhood snacks using fresh fruit and vegetable juice pulp. This pulp that might otherwise end up in landfill is full of fibre and contains half the nutrients of a whole fruit or vegetable, with only 1/3 of the sugar. And Rind Snacks keeps the peel on its dried fruit to maximise nutrition and minimise waste. Given that edible peels represents an estimated 15% of the 1.3 billion tonnes of annual food wasted, this is a small change that is having a maximum impact. Looking at ag tech, US farmers are spending almost $50 billion towards farm improvements, agricultural chemicals, and self-propelled machinery each year to help traceability and health of assets, enabling farmers to act fast, prevent losses, and realise better returns. The risk of food loss at this level is propelling innovation, and Food Bites alone has seen an increase in ag tech applications from 9% to 28% since launching in 2015. Our other innovation platform, Terra, focuses on bringing together decision makers and innovators across the entire food and ag value chain to capture and foster synergies that catapult major breakthroughs into scalable solutions. For example, Regrain's mission to reduce waste by upcycling discarded grains left over from beer production resulted in a nutritious granola bar. Through Terra, Regrain partnered with Griffith Food, who not only helped Regrain improve their formulation of the granola bar, but they also discovered that the leftover grain served well as an ingredient in other products, diversifying their commercial offering. This successful partnership resulted in Griffith Food leading Regrain's strategic financing round of $2.5 million. On the topic of making it personal, as an expectant mother, tackling these environmental issues has never felt more personal to me. Fighting food loss and waste is a large and complex undertaking, and it's paramount that we take action collectively if we want to solve this problem. Food Bites and Terra are two parts of a larger effort by Rabobank, and we look forward to working with you all to raise awareness, to find solutions, and to grow a better world together.
Thank you, Victoria, for that. And now I'll call upon our last speaker at the rapid fire presentations. It's Dipti Thapa. Dipti is an economist with the World Bank Group. Dipti, please.
And then I'll start. Thank you. Good morning, I'm Dipti, and I'm part of the World Bank Task Force on Food Loss and Waste, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. The theme, Making It Personal, made me think about our own journey as an institution and as a team in tackling the food loss and waste challenge. So I'll talk about that and share it with you. Not too long ago, a small team of us was asked to take on the food loss and waste topic. And it had us thinking, why exactly was an institution like the World Bank interested in tackling food loss and waste? Now, the sheer magnitude of the problem we definitely appreciated that. And you've heard the numbers before. It's $1 trillion problem annually, globally. Up to 1.3 billion tons of food is either lost or wasted along the value chain. But what really convinced us to take on this topic is the inextricable link between climate change and food loss and waste. We've heard that about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to food loss and waste. We also know that food loss and waste can be both a mitigation as well as an adaptation strategy. In fact, a lot of our client countries have appreciated this and have included concrete food loss and waste measures in their NDCs. So it seems that countries will not be able to meet their Paris climate commitments without tackling the issue of food loss and waste. So for us, within the World Bank, this was a clear development challenge. And it was a symptom of a broken food system, if you will. So what exactly was the institution doing, and what had it been doing all these years to tackle this issue? We had our team take a closer look at our portfolio to go back to our projects on the ground across the globe to see exactly what was being done to address this issue. And it turns out we were actually doing quite a bit already. It spanned from farm to fork to landfill, in fact. For example, in Angola, we were working with rural smallholder farmers to address food loss and waste in perishables, fruits and vegetables, which actually have the highest rates of food loss and waste that you've heard. We were working to add value, to decrease post-harvest losses, as well as to increase market linkages. On the other end of the spectrum, on waste, we were working with China in its rapidly urbanizing cities to tackle solid waste management. So collecting and sorting, transportation, dealing with kitchen waste, the use of biogas, for example. So we were doing quite a bit, and in terms of finances, we realized that we were spending up to $3 billion over the past 5 years as an institution on food loss and waste. So this may seem like a large number, but what we felt as a team was that we weren't quite tackling the issue in a systematic manner. Our interventions were ad hoc. They were opportunistic at best, based on the assumption that any reductions of food loss and waste along the value chain would have positive externalities. There were clear gaps in our interventions, and we didn't understand the problem. We found, for example, that the thinking on the economics of food loss and waste was largely non-existent. For example, what were the drivers of food loss and waste? We also felt that unlike any other development challenge out there was no clear process on how to facilitate action. For example, where were the largest losses happening? Which countries, which regions, which commodities? We didn't have an idea. What exactly were the policies that we needed to have the highest impact? We didn't know that either. And relatedly, what types of investments and at what scale was needed? So knowing what we know, or rather knowing what we don't know, we went back to the drawing board. We firstly tapped some brilliant minds in academia, for example, Cornell University, as well as our partner organizations, including some of you who are in the room, to help us develop a conceptual and economic framework on food loss and waste. This, we hoped, would provide the underpinning for any work moving forward. And basically, this framework, we hoped, would give us a better sense of the economic drivers of food loss and waste, as well as the impacts of policies on behaviors, on incentive structures. And we hoped that using this, we would be able to define policy levers for action along the value chain. Guided by this framework, we also are in the process of developing food smart country diagnostics. So these country diagnostics in select countries will be a deep dive looking at to identify hotspots, to quantify the magnitude of hotspots and help define the kinds of policy interventions that are needed. And finally, to tie back with the in-country, on-the-ground interventions that really is at the heart of what the World Bank does, we hope to influence the pipeline of projects moving forward on food loss and waste. And hope that next year I will be able to stand at a platform like this and be able to share a concrete plan of action that takes on a food systems approach, if you will, that links and analyzes the trade-offs between food loss and waste and nutrition and climate change and food safety. That will help our client countries get that much closer to achieving SDG 12.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipti. I think I might take you up on the last one, coming back in a year's time and hearing the concrete results. So now, before we move to the panel discussion, we need all of you in here in the room activated so you can get your phones out now. I know you're itching to touch your iPhones or whatever you're using. And also, all of you out there online, please, Katala will just get it forward. So now we'll have a short poll. 3 questions. And you need, first of all, to go into slido.com. And the password, when you get there, is #123 IFPRI, IFPRI. Don't write it. Don't write hashtag. Sorry about that. So the password is 123 IFPRI. And when people start looking up from the phones, I will. Oh, I see you already going at it. So first question is, the best way to scale idea business that fights food waste is through and public-private partnerships, access to funding, government-induced incentives, public communications. Oh, they're shifting. Okay. This is like popcorn when it's not ticking so much, you have to stop, but they're still. Okay. Now it's slowing down. Whoa. There's people online. There's a little delay time for people online, so we'll just be patient. Can we reach 100? Okay. I think we'll try. I think we have a rather clear. I want that 100. Okay. I think we'll move on to the next. Yeah? Still coming? You want? The popcorn is still ticking? Yeah.
Get to the 100.
Yeah, get to the 100 and then we move. Okay. Oh. Wait. Yeah. So I think we go to the next. Oh, sorry. So, who do you see as the main key player in tackling food waste and loss? Consumers, NGOs, multilateral organizations, retailers, and restaurants.
Take this one.
Yeah, it's going faster this time, huh? All of the above. Okay. And 100, and then we move. Okay, we move to the last quick. I did it again. So, what do you do as an individual to fight food waste at home? So thank you. I think I will end it here. Yeah. Thank you, and I will stop it. Okay. So now I'd like to ask the speakers to come up and sit in your respective chairs, and then we will open up for questions in a little while. So we'll take 3 questions at a time, I think, for our speakers, and they will give brief answers. And it would be nice if you can briefly state your name, your institution, and your questions or comment, and who you would like to address it to. And we will also invite the onlines in. I will take you in a little in the next round. But first, I would maybe kick off by using the poll. We saw that it was about partnerships. It was about everyone should get involved. And I think that we picked up on some of those in the presentations. I would maybe come back to you, Victoria. You ended up by talking about collective action, and that is what we saw from the poll. But how do we get that collective action moving?
Yeah, I would say that it starts with, to sort of go back to what we're doing here at Rabobank, is providing public platforms that allow us to give, I guess, a platform for these innovations, these entrepreneurs to stand up and talk about what they're doing. Funding is incredibly important for these guys to continue to do what they're doing. And, you know, it starts off, I think, as a little bit of a a passion and an interest for them, and it turns into much more than that. And I think that what inevitably ends up happening is they don't get the funding and they don't get the partnerships, and that's what we're trying to do with giving a public platform like Food Bites, is opening them up to industry leaders, opening them up to corporates, opening them up to potential investors to provide that platform.
Thank you. Now I'll open up the floor. I can already see some hands. Yes, please. Yes.
This is my name is Ipsita. I'm from
Oh, sorry. There's a mic coming.
Hi, I'm Ipsita. I'm from the University of Maryland. This is mainly targeting like the speakers who came from research institutions. We talked about the role of farmers in waste, but have you seen any results that how government subsidies have impacted food loss in particular?
Thank you. The next one, the gentleman over there.
I'm wasting my tea. So my name is Bela from Hungarian Embassy for Agricultural Attaché, and I see very good presentation. And just a quick notice, I mean, I think Rob's presentation was very good, and what I'm missing from here, the farmers, the Farm Bureau. I mean, we're talking about them, but I would be happy to see them and to tell them what we think about it. So just that's all my notice, and I think Rob was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia. I'm from China. I'm studying at George Washington University. I'm studying international development. And my question is about cultural barriers. Taking leftover food in some culture may relate it to poverty or shame. So during the implementation of your programs, have you ever encountered cultural barriers, and how did you overcome those barriers? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the panel, I think the first question was for the research institutions. So who would, Shenggen, would you?
Yeah, I think the subsidy is the big elephant in the room. Yeah, we spend probably $500 billion or $600 billion in subsidizing grain production. By doing that, we actually depress food prices, particularly grain prices. And obviously, when the food is cheap, when the grains are cheap, and people waste. So that's a big part of the problem. Now, I wanted to also mention about the farmers. Yeah, I was a farmer maybe 40 years ago in China. By that time, we were very poor. We don't waste any food. But I mean, at least our intention was. But how can we really make sure that we have certain technologies, whether it's farming technology or storage, to make sure that the crops in the field do not fall down when there is a wind, a strong wind, strong let's say, rainfalls, and also storage. What sort of technology, what sort of methods you can really store the food, because sometimes we eat rotten food for a year or two. That's not good for our health. The cultural barriers, yes, I think, Nista, from my experience, there was a big shift in China. Some years ago, it is a must. We have some food left on your dining table when you entertain your guests. That's a sign of prosperity or being polite. But today, actually, it's a shame if you order too much food, if you waste food. And it's a shame if you don't, let's say, bag your food left from your dining table. I think that it can be changed. I mean, that's if the society is aware. I mean, we were talking about awareness, right? I do think the awareness is very much part of that, and communication is a very big part of that.
Thank you, Shenggen. So, Rob, would you? And then Esben.
Following up on what Shenggen said and taking the three questions in one, basically, is the key promise to solve a coordination problem in the food system. So typically we see farmers that have a lot of food losses are sort of in a bind, because if they let they don't harvest everything, or they have the things that they don't market, then they lose money. If they take it to market and the market doesn't work properly, the prices plunge. If everybody does at the same time, they still don't make any money. So what needs to be solved is the coordination problem that the markets work. So when you see that the food chains are working better, right, from the farm onto the market, that there's storage space, there's processing capacity, then we don't lose that effect, and then the farmers can have the gain. So I think that also answers the question about the subsidies. A lot of the subsidies that we see is they're promoting production. They're not promoting the development of the full chain, right? So if we don't do that, then we may be pushing in one direction, but just encourage more losses along the chain. I guess that's also the answer to the question, well, where the farmers? So it's the farmers, they're just one part of the chain, and an important part of the chain, but they're in this bind, as I said. So if the rest of the chain is not properly organized, then you see very little success. So for instance, and other research that we've done, which I didn't mention, if you get sort of cold storage and cold chain development, for instance, it's found in potato markets in India, for instance, then you can get almost zero food loss, simply because the chain is working better, and farmers can also smooth the production over the seasonality of the harvesting, such that that things work more efficiently and you get much less food loss.
Thank you, Rob. Esben?
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. Definitely the cultural barriers are a thing we see around the globe in, of course, different paths depending on where you are. We have a better buying lab in World Resources Institute, where we are trying to push the agenda by analysis and how the industry creates language for some of these things. We need to use that language also in fighting food waste and in having more healthy diets. So that's definitely a part of it. But I also think, and that's a thing I have noticed through many years, because I had the pleasure as a minister to start the World Food Summit in Copenhagen, and a lot of the discussions there really was about moral issues. So we need to have a push for a moral philosophy as well in society in general, especially in the developed countries, to say it's not okay to lose food. And we, of course, as a research institution, can contribute with data and insights, but it's very important also to push the agenda from a moral perspective. And I think you touched upon the other parts, so I don't need to do that.
Thank you, Esben. Yeah, Denise?
So I would just like to mention, too, that we are to the culture barriers. We are very careful about how we connect zero hunger and zero waste. But we fully believe that we won't end hunger as long as we are still wasting so much food and sending so much food to the landfill. So when we talk about zero hunger, zero waste, we also note that the food that we donate to go to our communities is not food waste. And the WRI, food loss and waste standard calls that out as well, because it counts food waste as after donations. So we truly have a little bit of a communications challenge sometimes to make sure that we're using the right language and that we emphasize that we are giving healthy, nutritious, wholesome food to people in our communities to eat. And then what we cannot give to people, we recycle. So we have about 2,000 of our stores have active food waste recycling programs, and those include composting, animal feed, and anaerobic digestion, depending on where we are in the country. So we do have programs, that help handle our food waste after we rescue as much as we can.
Thank you, Denise. Now, I would like to invite the online audience in. I know there are questions. So could we have maybe 3 of the questions for the panel, please?
Hi, so there are 2 questions from our Facebook online audience. The first one is Gauda from India. He asks, what's your strategy in preventing food losses with most populous and agri-sector dependent country like in India? And the second one is from Zambia. In Zambia, Enoch asks, how could you use the private sector players in countries like Zambia, which have been badly hit by severe drought?
Okay, Amy, I don't think that's for you. You will be asked in a little while, so maybe Shenggen first.
I think you need $1 million, maybe even more, to answer that question. But I think, as Rob said, we need a comprehensive approach. One is the technology. Do we have good technology? Let's say in the whole value chain from the production side. The Green Revolution actually is introduction of semi-dwarf wheat and rice. That actually is the prevention of food loss in the field. So you increase the yield by using more fertilizers. You need a strong straw. So the semi-dwarf means strong, shorter straw that can use more fertilizer to produce more grains. So technology, even on farm, then processing, transportation, so the technology part, the incentive part, the price, yes, I think we need to fix the price. The farmers or even traders do not have the right incentives. It's to save the food, to prevent the loss or waste of the food. And then the consumers, obviously, they need knowledge, information, data. Another big issue, maybe a couple of big issues, is nutrition. Nutrition. Most of the food we lost is actually nutritious foods. But in the meantime, we're facing not just the hunger, but lack of micronutrients called hidden hunger. So that link has not been discussed much. The second one is actually overweight, obesity. We simply eat too much. When we eat too much, we waste food. We emit more carbons into the air. It also creates health problem for ourselves and for the society. I think India needs a comprehensive approach to tackle that challenge through policy, technology, behavior change, institutional capacity, and beyond.
Thank you. I think Dipti would.
Sure. I'd just like to mention that we are in dialogue with our counterparts in India as well. And I agree with what Shenggen had to say. With countries like India, of course, you'll have to think about both the rural as well as the rapidly urbanizing centers. So focusing on both post-harvest losses in the rural areas as well as solid waste management and the waste issue in these rapidly urbanizing countries. We talk a lot about the global numbers and the macro figures, but we do realize that the solutions will have to be at the local level. So they will have to be targeted and for the situations at the local level. And just to mention that we are engaging with the private sector as well. We want to make sure that this is a private-public partnership in the work that we do, and we see that important. Thank you.
Thank you. And Esben?
Yeah, I think one of the answers to whether it's in Africa or in Asia, to both of the questions, is really that we have a structured approach, like the approach the World Bank is planning on. We launched a report before Christmas, World Resources Institute, the World Bank, and UN agencies on how to feed the planet in a sustainable manner in the future. And we have one here, I can see. Not to make commercials, but a little product placement is okay. What we see in a lot of places around the world when we work with this policy is really that we don't have a structured approach and we don't implement best practices all over. So a lot of places we try to reinvent the wheel, which is really not necessary. So having a structured approach with national governments, it could be in India or in regions in India, or for instance in Zambia or other African countries, with money from the World Bank, with expertise from institutions like IFPRI, World Resources Institute, and national countries' development policies, we can actually tailor solutions at the ground level. And then I think, as Shenggen also touched upon, the capacity building is crucial, because when the program ends one day, we really need local people to be able to push it forward. And that's why not only the World Bank, but also Rabobank's approach is so highly, highly interesting, seen from a perspective from the World Resources Institute.
Okay. Thank you, Esben. I think we'll come back to the room now. I see more hands. Yes. The guy. Yeah.
My name is Jose. I'm just a citizen activist on this issue, but I was just wondering, nobody on the panel talked about the food loss and waste around animal and protein production, everything from the bycatch when we harvest seafood to the waste that's involved in industrial animal production.
Yes, and the lady next to her.
Sabina O'Hara, Dean of Agriculture here at the University of the District of Columbia, actually Agriculture and Urban Sustainability, if you can believe that. Thank you, first of all, for your presentations, great presentations. I'm wondering if the waste loss issue isn't a bit of a larger issue beyond the value chain of food, and I'm thinking particularly of water. Have any of you done any work on this? Because of course, agriculture is also the biggest freshwater consumer. And while we've made some inroads in transportation and in energy generation, in shrinking the footprint of those two sectors, we have made very little inroads in shrinking the footprint of agriculture. And so it seems to me what you're describing is this larger question of the circular economy. And how do we get there from here? Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. And there was, yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Julie Kurtz. I'm here at IFPRI. I was wondering about how you think that integrating these kinds of practices within an organization around food waste, how building that consciousness within the culture of an organization affects the kind of research and work that an organization does, so that internal integration into the external facing work that an organization like IFPRI or others might do.
Maybe take one more. Yes, gentleman in the back.
Yep. Will Martin from IFPRI. Wonderful presentations. Thank you very much. One question in my mind, though, when we think, we're obviously loss and waste is bad news, from a global point of view. But when we think through what's the impact on the poor, the loss and waste that can be averted via the mechanisms that Rob talked about, storage bags for small producers who are suffering from loss of their food during storage. That's very clearly an income gain to those poor households. It's not so clear that increasing or reducing loss in the rich countries has the same direct impact on poverty and food security of the poor. It probably does help, but it's probably a lesser order of magnitude of help, I suspect. That we shouldn't, I'm just thinking perhaps we should prioritize more reducing losses that generate those direct income gains to poor people in the same way we should prioritize improving productivity of small poor farmers.
Thank you. I think I will turn back to the panel now, and I think maybe Amy, I think this could be picking up on the last question could be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously the food that we recover at the kitchen goes into shelter meals that we send out to our agencies. However, I think, you spoke to a crucial point that in the U.S., the way that food recovery works, for the most part, it goes to food banks, and that food gets sent out to people who need the food, and it's kind of this never-ending cycle. And while, yes, it's great that that food is going to a place that people can eat it, and that's wonderful, it inherently is not helping those people rise out of their situations. And that's obviously where the work of the kitchen we strive to fill, to figure out how we can close that gap by creating jobs and creating opportunities rather than just continuing that cycle. But I'd love to hear other thoughts from the panelists. Just wanted to give one kind of interesting example on meat, because obviously we have talked about fruits and vegetables a lot, but kind of an on-the-ground example. We have partnered with the Honey Baked Ham Company. Everyone, think of the Honey Baked Hams you get at Christmas time. They're beautiful and they're perfectly shaped. There's many stores around this area, and they actually have all of the cuts of the ham that don't make it into those pretty displays. Typically, we're getting thrown away. And then a local church got involved and said, hey, can we take that somewhere? And so that is turned into thousands of pounds of great pieces of ham that gets donated to us and Martha's Table, and Arlington Food Assistance Center every month that goes into our meals. There's just so many little pieces where food waste happens, and sometimes it just takes somebody taking action and doing something about it.
Thank you, Amy. Rob, please.
Again, also to continue on the question of what does it mean to the poor, but starting at the early stage of the food chain. Of course, if you manage to reduce food loss, and it also means that farmers can sell more in the market, then there will be a gain on the side of the poor. Of course, there can be a trade-off if, like also with what I showed in our experiments, if there's a premium on the better quality food, means that food also becomes a bit more expensive, and that may have a trade-off to some of the poor if they can't afford it. And then in many cases, they get more value for their money, but they may not see that because it's still the same product. So that's something that needs to be looked at. Likewise, also if and that links a bit to the previous points I've been making, is the whole system needs to work properly to make things happen. So like we've been working with a small business that called the Cold Hubs in Nigeria that does solar-powered cooled storage space for fruits and vegetables. And that's working very well. And you would expect that because of in those cases, sometimes 40 to 60% reductions in food loss because of the existence of the food of the cold storage space, then also prices in the market would drop. But the cost of actually the investment that needs to be made to establish the cold chain is not throwing the prices down and making it more accessible. And that's part of because not the whole chain is cooperating such that the markets adjust to the greater supply against the existing demand. So that's the things that you have to look in, so that they're not automatic win-win-wins, but we need to look at it through the chain and then see that either the prices go down because we help reduce food losses, or that there's the recognition that because of the quality, the increased quality, that it also pays off to poor people to buy those products with a premium.
Thank you, Rob. Now I'd like to turn to Dan, and how does this look from Brooklyn?
Cool. So I think to address the question about how does internal behaviors affect the external ones, this is more of, I think, at a micro level because it's at a restaurant level and at a more interpersonal level. But what we've found is that some shops that use us as a very simple solution for maybe their surplus sandwiches or maybe their pastries, once they start to see an impact on that, they begin to view their shrink a little bit differently. So it becomes, all right, we have some really good like fresh mozzarella, which we normally have to take off the shelves, and that's just part of our loss. But now we're going to use this as a solution because this isn't just an opportunity to sell it, it's an opportunity to maybe drive a new customer in. So that's one side on the business piece. The other one is on the people that are actually posting the food. So the employees that are actually involved, a lot of the times they are probably making minimum wage, and fresh mozzarella isn't normally something you add to a minimum wage budget. So being able to engage and have a really positive action that knows that you're no longer throwing out the food, but you have a solution for it, transfers back to the home, and they start to kind of look at their food differently there too. So not at the corporate level, but at the restaurant level, we definitely see some movement and a positive feedback loop.
Thank you. And Esben?
Yeah, to answer Sabine O'Hara's question about water, we have a big water program at WRI where we work from everything research to groundwater mapping, scarcity of water, how that impacts food production, how can you improve yield without using more water, and so forth. So that's an integrated part of our whole approach in food production, and also in our recommendations to governments, UN, and so forth, when we work around these issues. On the question from the gentleman on proteins, it's very interesting. When I was a boy, I grew up on a dairy farm, and we would get the wee back from the dairy as a leftover product that we would give to the calves because nobody knew what to do about it. But suddenly someone at Arla Foods found out that that could be $1 million or billion-dollar industry if you could extract the protein out of the wee and use that for children's food. So today that's a major export into the global market. The same with the pulp from potatoes, the starch, that you can improve that as a part of your production. And I mention it because that's really technologies that are in the market, but we need investments, we need smallholders to be able to use already known technology in developing countries to get a better business case out of their leftover products. And that's really an important part of developing ground production.
And so I will end by giving the word to Victoria and then Denise, and then we'll...
Yeah, just to follow on from that conversation around animal proteins, as Esben was just touching on, seafood is definitely a big trend that we're seeing. We know that there's a huge issue. It's the second largest food waste product after fruit and vegetables. I think we find it's 35%. So it's definitely something that we're seeing come through in an innovation perspective. We have a lot of technologies that are trying to come up with bycatch solutions to minimise that waste that I think so many of us eat the same sorts of fish when we go to the supermarket or we go to our fish or seafood store. So I think that there's an issue that we're all eating the same things that we know. It's a upskilling, it's a knowledge thing, but I think the bycatch is a huge issue for us, and we're seeing a huge amount of technology come through, which is really exciting. And on the animal protein side, we're also seeing we have our next event, which is in San Francisco, Food Bites San Francisco at the end of March. Not to plug it, but we do have our first ever pet food company that we'll be pitching, which is really exciting, also seeing that in the animal protein space.
So just to mention really quickly on animal protein. So sometimes people are surprised to hear that at the retail level, half of what we donate is meat. So meat is actually the easiest thing for us to donate because we can freeze it. And then there's not as much urgency for the pantries and food banks to come pick it up as quickly. Our bigger donation opportunity is actually produce because it is so hard to keep that fresh for the people who want it. So, and then for seafood, we also have been working for many years on how to improve our seafood merchandising and best practices. So it would help us if more customers would buy frozen seafood. Seafood that comes in frozen, but that we thaw to sell because people want fresh seafood, we actually have trouble donating after that fact. So we're trying to change kind of how consumers think about seafood and sell more frozen seafood wherever possible.
Thank you. And with that, I think we all should give the panel a big round of applause. And then I will give the floor to Manish Babna. Manish is the Managing Director at World Resource Institute, and he will wrap up this event today and give us some closing remarks.
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here with all of you today. incredibly rich and inspiring set of stories. Shenggen, I was taken that in China, today is, as you said, National Tree Planting Day. What many of you may not know is in the United States, it's National Pancake Day. True story. Free set of short stack pancakes at IHOP anywhere in the country. I'm not going to draw any conclusions for you, but leave that to you in terms of where the two countries are. 3 conclusions. The first, the size of the prize in terms of reducing food loss and waste is undeniable, right? You heard lots of numbers today, the close to $1 trillion of economic losses that could be avoided, the 1.3 billion tons of food, 8% of greenhouse gas emissions from food loss and waste. In our own kind of work we've done, meeting the SDG target 12.3 of reducing food waste by half and making progress on food loss would actually capture 20% of the gap between where we are today in terms of what food we have and where we need to be in 2050. So that is a fairly significant chunk just from reducing food loss and waste by a half. 3 gigatons of emissions by 2050 from meeting SDG 12.3. That's comparable to the emissions from the energy and industrial sectors from India today. So very, very significant. But we know that even though the size of the prize is incredibly large, there are real obstacles, right? Policies, institutions, awareness, the really good point that Rob and others made around incentives. How do you get the incentives aligned? So even though the size of the prize is clear, we know why it's important, we kind of know what to do. How do you actually get it done? Hugely important, hugely the challenge. The second point is, even with those challenges, the second point is proof points, examples of what works actually does exist. And what you heard today, incredibly inspiring stories of what works at various levels. And what was really special about this panel is how you made it personal. This is an issue that everyone can connect with, right? Farmers can connect with. IFPRI, the World Bank, others spoke about the work they're doing with farmers, with farmer associations, office workers, right? DC Kitchen, your kind of the WRI, Kroger. I mean, the example of how that is a way that brings people together, incredibly helpful. And for the individual, right? Household, your local, kind of that app, how it kind of activate you, DC Kitchen, kind of what you could do in the local community. That ability to make it local makes this an incredibly important agenda that we could imagine progress. And this is at a time when a lot of the recent studies on losses on farms recognize that we still have a challenge. Those losses remain high. And as countries get richer, we know that the challenge actually becomes worse. It shifts a little bit more to the waste side, to the fork side, but it still remains a big challenge. So the headwinds remain strong. And that kind of brings me to the third point, which is we have a moment now in the next few years where food loss and waste has not been on the agenda, right, in the same way it is today for a long time. And we're seeing incredible movement accelerating. We're seeing in the private sector, in addition to what you heard today, we have big associations, the Consumer Goods Forum, the Global Agribusiness Alliance, that have made major commitments around food loss and waste. We're seeing public-private partnerships in the US, in the United Kingdom, in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in Indonesia, take real steps. We're seeing banks step up to the plate. You heard great stories here from Rabobank, from the World Bank. You see individuals stepping up. In Denmark, incredible story of 8% reduction in food loss and waste through public awareness, public action. So there's a moment here, kind of a real movement that's building. And the question is whether we can leverage that while it remains front and center in the agenda. And so with that, I just want to close with a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He once said, "Without public sentiment, nothing can succeed. With it, nothing can fail." And it's this type of event where we're reaching out to a lot of people, making it personal, that makes this such an incredible opportunity and a privilege to be here. So thank you to IFPRI. Thank you to all the other organizers, and thanks to all of you for joining us today.
So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And there will be a small reception just outside if you'd like to continue the conversation.